All right, let's get started. Let's let everybody in.
In progress. Recording in progress.
So I think I'm going to mute everybody to get started. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sophia King, Alderman of the 4th Ward. Happy to be before you all this evening. We started off by muting everyone. So if you're coming in, please make sure you're muted as we get started with this presentation. This evening, I'm excited to introduce a presentation by Northwestern Medicine about a new healthcare facility in our area, specifically in Bronzeville, in the Grand Boulevard area on Cottage Grove. Let me try and mute all again. Let's try that. Okay. So again, excited to bring to you a proposal for a healthcare proposal from Northwestern Medicine for the Bronzeville area, specifically in Grand Boulevard on Cottage Grove. The Grand Boulevard Advisory Council, which I will introduce the chair to you in just a moment, had an opportunity to preview this presentation, and they are here with me today. Members of the Grand Boulevard Advisory Council leadership is here with me today to also ask questions based on the presentation that they had earlier, I believe last week or the week before. The days are running together, but they're here today. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the chair of the Grand Boulevard Advisory Council to introduce his leadership team. So Marcellus Moore, with no further ado, I'd like to bring you up. Oh, there you go.
Absolutely. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Alderman King. Thank you, Northwestern, and everyone else for being here. I appreciate the introduction. Marcellus Moore, Chair of the Grand Boulevard Advisory Council. For those of you not familiar with the advisory councils, very quickly and briefly, as the Alderman asked, we have several different committees encompassing community safety, economic development, infrastructure, education, and arts and parks. So I certainly welcome more engagement, but for our team tonight, I know I saw Susan Carmouche, who is our Arts and Parks Chair. Harley, give me a thumbs up. Are you working with us? All right, so we had a recent transition in our development committee, and I believe Harley Martin will be joining and co-chairing with David Kelly as co-chairs in that development committee. But we hadn't spoken yet, so I didn't want to put you out there yet. And I see David Kelly calling me on my other phone, so he'll be logging in shortly. But yeah, we're excited about this project. We were happy to hear what was going on. I think for me, a big exciting part of it was the involvement of Pastor Chris Harris and his organization. So I'm guessing we'll hear more from them. But I think you all will be excited about what's going on with this project and what the Alderman's office and we're working on in the community, and just look forward to having them present to you tonight. So I hope that was brief enough.
It was, Mr. Moore. Thank you so much. And just a little bit more about advisory councils. I think most people do know that every community in the 4th Ward, we have established advisory councils. Some of them are more seasoned than others. The Grand Boulevard Advisory Council, I would just like to say, has hit the ground running and is doing a phenomenal job of engaging the community. But every community, Grand Boulevard, North Kenwood, Oakland, Kenwood, Hyde Park, South Loop, Douglas, all have advisory councils. So if you would like to join them, please reach out to our office and we can connect you with the chairs or the chairs of the subcommittees that you may be interested in. But each advisory council has different subcommittees consisting of development, which is what we're dealing with here. But we've got safety subcommittee, we've got arts and parks, we've got infrastructure, all types of things that you can get involved in, education. And so please do get involved if you're not already involved. But as I mentioned earlier, this evening we are have the opportunity to hear from the Northwestern medical team about a proposal for a healthcare facility in the Grand Boulevard community. And so I would like to turn it over to their team in order to do a brief presentation so that we can save the majority of time for questions and answers from the community and for the community. I will say that after the presentation, we will use a raise your hand function in order to ask questions once the presentation has ended. And hopefully we'll get to everybody's question, or at least, the folks that ask question may ask the question that you're thinking of. And so hopefully we get to at least all of the concerns that may come about tonight. So with no further ado, I'd like to first thank the Northwestern team and invite their vice president, I hope I didn't demote you, Rob, of the Northwestern Medical team. And with no further ado, take it over, Rob.
Well, thank you, Alderman King. We very much appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Moore, and the members of the Grand Boulevard Advisory Council. We're very excited to talk to you tonight about our plans for Bronzeville. And Prentice, if I could ask you to go ahead and bring up the agenda slide and we'll go from there. Thank you. So we have a brief presentation that'll last about 15-20 minutes because we also want to get into the question and answer period. We want to hear from you, but we want to give you a chance to understand what our thought process is and what our plans are for Bronzeville. It's very exciting. So with that, I'm going to make a few introductions on the next slide, please. This is our team. It's a very busy slide, but tonight speaking will be Gina Weldy. She's our Senior VP of Real Estate and has been involved in several other projects like this and will be a very much integral part of this team. Next is Charlie Cloutier, who is our Director of Construction and Planning. Charlie will be directly involved in this project. Not with us tonight because he is taking his daughter to college for her first night of college is Posh Charles, but in future meetings, Posh, our Senior VP of Community Affairs and Marketing, will be part of the team. And also we have a special guest with us tonight, Pastor Chris Harris from Bright Star, who I think many of you know. So with that, we'll get into the presentation and start with the next slide, which begins with an overview of why have we selected Bronzeville? Why do we want to come to your community? Well, it really is a community that we've been engaged in already for a number of years that goes back over 45 years, including our relationship with Near North as far as a partner that we've been working with in your community to provide care. As part of our relationship with Near North, we've been rotating Feinberg School of Medicine internal residents through Near North's Comet Holman Health Clinic over a number of years, as well as providing care at Near North's other locations in your community. We will hear a little bit in a second from Pastor Harris to talk about our 8-year journey together with him and with Bright Star and how we've worked together with Bright Star and other leading organizations, including University of Chicago, in your community. We're also excited to announce that we're going to expand a very successful program that we've initiated at Westinghouse High School into Bronzeville, and we have targeted Kenwood High School to be our next community high school that we will partner with. I can go into more detail about what this means, but it's a program that allows students to get a more clear understanding of what it takes to become a medical researcher or a physician, and it takes them through a 4-year process. It's been very successful at Westinghouse, and we're excited to announce that Kenwood will be our next location. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Chris Harris, who can tell us a little bit more about the journey that we've been on together with Bright Star for the last 8 years.
You know, as a pastor, you're supposed to start off, at church, we all start off with first giving honor to God. And so tonight, in that same fashion, I'm really excited to say thanks to our alderman, who I'm a huge fan of, and she's done a fantastic job. And certainly to all of you all today, Marcellus, thank you for a great introduction tonight. As a son of the soil of Bronzeville, born and raised in Bronzeville, been here my entire life. Also pastor Bright Star Church on 44th and Cottage, the church that I was born and raised in. When I started pastoring, I had an afro. Now I'm bald, so that tells you what pastoring can do to you. And I'm also one who have raised all of his children. My mom used to go to Phillips. So I've been in Bronzeville my entire life, and it's really, really exciting. I'm also the founder and CEO of Bright Star Community Outreach, separate 501c3, where we offer counseling, mentorship, parenting, workforce development, and advocacy. But when I took a trip to Israel in December of 2012, ironically, and I believe divinely and strategically, that's actually where I met, when I met Alderman King, who was not an alderman. She was just Sophia King at that time, and who knew she would become alderman. And we brought a trauma counseling effort that has now touched more than 45,000 people in the Bronzeville, Greater Bronzeville, and Chicagoland area. Well, when we first started that effort, we partnered with Northwestern, University of Chicago, United Way, Cigna, MacArthur, and others. But our anchor institution that we partnered with was Northwestern, from a funding perspective, from a capacity building perspective, and things like that. And one of the first things we began to talk about are the social determinants of health. That was a big deal. Again, to be clear, that was not something that I knew anything about. And so knowledge transfer, community partnership, and through this partnership, we have been able to not only talk about health for the past 8 years, social determinants of health, but it went a little bit further. What we said to Northwestern is we don't want to date, we want to be married. And we need you guys to commit to Bronzeville in a broader way. And they even went beyond that. And we've been able to build a 105 organization coalition where we've been focusing on workforce development, trauma, and so many other things. And it's been a really exciting ride. And so I just want to say I'm really excited about the fact that they're coming right here into the area. Again, one of the things that I know about Bronzeville since I've been here my entire life, having this kind of facility, these kinds of services, and access to quality healthcare is really, really important to me, not only as a pastor in the community, not only as a business owner in the community, but also as a husband, as a father, as a son, because it's nice to have quality healthcare right within our reach. Conversation with many, many institutions of health that we partner with, but I'm really excited that Northwestern has made this move and is making this move. And imagine, in these 8 years, we've touched more than 45,000 people with trauma services. We have been able to give job placement in partnership with them to more than 3,000 people. So I'm excited about the fact that they are not just talking, but now they're just walking the walk. And I'm looking forward to this happening that will not only bring healthcare, but jobs and so many other things. So thank you guys for this time. And I'm excited about the furtherance of the conversation.
Well, thank you, Pastor Harris. Appreciate it very much. And, we too are excited about coming to Bronzeville. It's hard to match your enthusiasm, though, I must say. Prentice, if we could move to the next slide, please. I want to give you a quick overview of what we're talking about on this location, which will be between 48th and 49th on Cottage Grove. This is not going to be a small clinic. This is going to be a large facility that will be a medical hub that will enable our patients who live in your community to access care closer to home. As you know, healthcare is moving away from an inpatient setting and into an outpatient setting, and that's what this facility will provide. We're looking at immediate care, including X-ray. The facility will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days a week. Primary and specialty care will offer extended hours depending upon the community need. We will offer mammograms, OB ultrasound, lab, pharmacy, and other ancillary services to meet the treatment needs of the patients in your community. And we're also this will be the first one of our facilities that will have in-house community programming on site that will allow community partners and others to come in and use our facility for community meetings. That's something we're looking forward to. So what are the services that we are contemplating bringing to this facility? We've done a great deal of research about patients who are already coming to us downtown, seeking care. And what we have found out are the following areas we think would be very useful in your community based on what our data shows us you are coming downtown for currently. And that's immediate care, including X-ray, primary care, a cancer center, which will include clinical space, infusion, pharmacy, lab, and access to clinical trials. So you no longer have to come all the way downtown for those cancer infusions or to have access to that clinical trial. Cardiology, dermatology, women's health, behavioral health. These are all things that we've identified as key needs of our patients that are coming from your community. Next slide. So again, in summary, care closer to home. We will include primary and specialty care. It will include urgent care. It will support our most vulnerable patients. It'll have convenient access to diagnostics and pharmacy. It'll provide economic support to the community. We will have retail on the first floor. We want your input on what that retail should be. So this will be a new building with retail opportunities. And, you know, we are proud of the fact that for the last 9 years, we've been cited by U.S. News and World Report as the top hospital in the Chicago area and one of the top 10 in the country. This is the kind of care we want to bring directly to your community. Now, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gina Weldy. Gina, as I mentioned earlier, is our Senior VP of Real Estate and Administration. And Gina is going to talk to you more about our community approach to healthcare delivery. Gina?
Thanks, Rob. Prentice, can you move to the next slide? Now that Rob's provided background on NM's current work in Bronzeville and also shared our high-level vision for the site, I'd like to take you into more detail on how NM thinks about expanding access for patients. NM routinely reviews data about where our existing patients and their families live. We look at the services that are in highest demand while also understanding the broader needs of the communities we serve. In addition, we consider drive times to both our hospitals and outpatient sites of care when thinking about where we add sites. We've learned over time that patients want their most frequent care close to home. We also spend time with patients and employees along with key stakeholders in individual communities to make sure we've appropriately honed our plans. For example, we don't always put mammogram or OB ultrasound in every outpatient site. We've learned these services are highly sought after in the Bronzeville community, so we've added them to our program. We also heard loud and clear in the meeting we were able to have with the Grand Boulevard development team that pediatrics is also something this community is interested in a healthcare provider bringing. We've taken that back to our team to recommend that we figure out how to work primary care pediatrics into this site. So on the next slide. As we look at any community, we can expand services via outpatient care, inpatient beds, or transportation and telehealth options to improve convenience and remove care barriers. Outpatient facilities range in size from 10,000 square feet, which deliver mainly immediate care and primary care services, all the way up to 100,000 or more square feet, which deliver immediate care, primary care, and a wide range of diagnostic and specialty care. The larger the facility, the larger the drive band we think about for patients coming to that facility. Inpatient facilities concentrate high acuity care with all the specialists and supportive technology in one location. Patients are typically willing to travel further as the requirements of their care increase. Finally, our real estate strategy thinks about how we eliminate transportation barriers to care. That may be through telehealth or by taking care closer to where patients live so that they're more likely to receive care earlier than they may have otherwise. Let me share an example to help you think about how all of these approaches to care delivery work together in a facility like the one we're proposing in Bronzeville. Women should routinely have a mammogram, and primary care physicians recommend this screening exam for patients based on age and history. The facility in Bronzeville will give women access to schedule their routine test closer to home, often making it more likely they'll get the screening test done. In cases with the unfortunate diagnosis of breast cancer, early detection will improve the patient's prognosis. A patient in Bronzeville will come to Northwestern Memorial Hospital for the biopsy, mastectomy, and reconstructive surgery, where a team of specialists focused on this specific surgery will take care of her. When it's time for chemotherapy, though, the patient won't have to come to NMH's campus 1 to 2 times per week. Instead, she'll be able to have that care in Bronzeville. This convenience helps make care easier and more comfortable for the patient. It also means the patient's family can more easily drop her off or pick her up, and they can park with the patient for treatment. Finally, admittedly, it eliminates the cost and frustration of parking on our downtown campus. If the patient doesn't have a readily available opportunity to receive an early detection mammogram, the care prognosis can be very different, unfortunately. The patient may discover a lump when the cancer is much more advanced. She may even end up in our emergency department at Northwestern Memorial Hospital when other symptoms of a more advanced cancer present. The goal is to eliminate acute illness by aligning patients with convenient care and a relationship with a physician earlier in the care delivery process. So next slide, please, Prentice. I'd like to share with you a bit about the existing NM patient in your community. 839 residents of Bronzeville and the surrounding community travel to an NM facility each day for an outpatient visit. In addition, 164 residents of Bronzeville and the surrounding communities are cared for in an NMH hospital bed each night. This data is one set of inputs that helped us set the vision for a large ambulatory facility in Bronzeville. The goal is to reduce the travel burden of those 839 daily visits and also hopefully prevent some of the 164 nightly hospital stays with care earlier in the disease cycle. So Prentice, I'll have you go to the next slide. This work resulted in NM identifying the Cottage Grove corridor and specifically most of the block, as you can see outlined in red here, between 48th and 49th along Cottage Grove as an optimal location for a large outpatient site in the community. NM has already acquired the southwest corner parcel at Cottage Grove and 48th. We're on track to close on a second privately owned parcel in the next several weeks. We still need to acquire city-owned land in the middle in order to assemble enough land for the building. That process is just beginning. And next slide. In addition to the medical space we've already discussed, the building is envisioned to include ground floor retail space for local businesses. In addition, it'll include shared public space for community program. We know that this is important both to the neighborhood, but also to our employees and patients that spend time in the building every day. Details will be further refined through the formal design and leasing process. Finally, this project will create jobs both during construction and once operational. We anticipate 1,000 construction jobs during the 2-year construction process and also 100 permanent jobs as clinical services come online. I will now introduce you to Charlie Cloutier, our Director of Planning and Construction, who will walk you through more details of the planned building. Charlie?
Thanks, Gina. I want to briefly touch on some of the issues with the site that we're looking at, how we plan to be collaborative in solving those issues, and finally compare this project to a few others within our health system. First, as you saw in the introduction slide, we are really excited about the team that we have put together so far. In the RFP we issued for design services, we stressed that diversity and community engagement were the key drivers for success on the project, which resulted in meaningful partnerships that brought people with experience in complex medical projects together with others who have great experience in designing beautiful buildings that respond to the local context and community feedback. The partnership between Brook Architecture and Lamar Johnson really stood out in this regard, and we plan to approach other aspects of the project in a similar fashion as we add team members and partners. Next slide. The site we are looking at is located at the southwest corner of Cottage Grove and 48th Street and extends south almost to 49th Street, but not quite. We're proposing around 100,000 square feet that would also have structured parking to fully support the parking demand this building would create, because we do not want to burden the community with street parking for our patients, staff, and visitors, nor would they be happy with that. This massing diagram is just a simple example of how those components may fit on the site. As we go through a comprehensive community engagement process, this massing can obviously change based on the feedback we receive. Although we have yet to really kick that process off, there is one thing we know already that's important to get right, and that is the structured parking component, the parking garage, if you will, of this development needs to look like the rest of the building and not simply be an exposed concrete parking structure stuck to the side of the outpatient care building like an appendage. We have done this successfully in several other projects, plan to do it here because it's also our goal for an aesthetically pleasing development. Next slide. So this slide shows a summary of 2 other projects in addition to Bronzeville that NM is currently pursuing in other parts of the city, and it has some comparative information between the 3. So the first one is in Old Irving Park. We plan to break ground on a 150,000 square foot building that also includes structured parking on top of that in the next few weeks. That building has immediate care, primary care, specialty care, oncology, and a variety of other support services. We went through a community engagement process on that project in conjunction with the Alderman Gardner, to arrive at the building we're moving forward with there. That process provided great feedback that resulted in us receiving zoning approval earlier in the spring. The second one in Lincoln Square, we just started construction on a project there, much smaller scale. It's only 10,000 square feet, similar to the model Gina mentioned. It only has immediate care, primary care, and a couple of rotating specialties. And then in Bronzeville, which is of a scale much closer to Old Irving Park, the service offerings are similar to that project with the additions of behavioral health, transplant, dermatology, and urogynecology. Next slide. On this slide, you'll see a rendering of the proposed building in Old Irving Park that I just spoke about. At Northwestern Medicine, we do not develop buildings with a design that is rigidly standardized across the system. Instead, we have a series of key features and materials we use in every building, whether it's in the city or suburbs, but we use a community engagement process to inform the massing and design of the building, utilizing those consistent components. We're not a real estate developer who needs to clear a certain financial hurdle in order for this project to work for us, nor are we looking to flip the building as part of an exit strategy to monetize the asset. We will own this building for the next 50 years, and therefore we will build with the highest quality materials available. Next slide. Inside is a similar story. We have a standard palette of materials that we use in all of our buildings across the entire system. Again, we use very high quality materials that stand up to the sometimes difficult environment. We can see in our healthcare settings where exposure to bodily fluids and increased wear and tear from a constant churn of patients, visitors, and staff coming through the building happens on a daily basis. We do like to incorporate some local elements when putting together our artwork packages, and we're excited to see how that portion of the project really reaches out and takes its cue from the community. I will now turn it over to Rob to close and take questions. Rob, you're muted.
Yeah,
Thank you, Charlie. As you can see, this is a major project that we've proposed for Bronzeville. It's not a small clinic. It's one of our largest outpatient facilities that we will have as far as all of our market areas. These are the specialty care areas that we plan to highlight at the facility, as well as immediate care and primary care. Again, I want to stress that we will offer community space in this building, as well as first floor retail and on-site parking. So we've given you a lot of information to think about, but we really want to hear from you, and we're excited about getting your input and to answer your questions. So Alderman, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
so thank you. I actually had some technical difficulties, so I had to walk to another room where hopefully my internet is better. So what I'd like to do now is to take questions and answers from, questions from the community and answers from the team. And I'd like to actually start with questions from the Grand Boulevard Advisory Council, just because they had a preview of the presentation, and they may be able to ask questions that they think that the community is interested in hearing about as well. And so with that, I will begin with questions from the chair. And then any other advisory council members, if you can just raise your hand. And then anybody else, if you could use the raise your hand function, because we have over 100 participants on this Zoom, I would love for us to use the raise your hand function. So I will wait a little bit for people to raise your hand, but with that in mind, Marcellus, if you Mr. Moore, if you've got a question, please feel free to ask that question as the chair of the Grand Boulevard Advisory Council. And then if any other of the chairs of your subcommittees would like to, especially the development chairs, would like to ask questions, even if you know the answers to them because you asked earlier during your preview, if you think it's a question that our community would be interested in understanding the answer to, that would be great.
So I will ask that. I see a couple questions in the chat, and I guess one question I ask is you're coming to the community, and anytime anyone's entering the community, it's a great pitch and it's a great presentation, and it's really exciting about the new opportunities that are coming to the community, and this sounds great. But I guess the question I'd ask is, what is the commitment to the long-term involvement and engagement once ground's been broken, once the doors have opened, and giving the community comfort that this isn't just, a nice, pretty presentation for the sake of getting the green light today, but really 5 years from now or 10 years from now, how are you all committed to making sure you're still really engaged in this part of the community?
Thanks, Marcellus. I'll take a shot at that if I can. As Charlie mentioned, we're not a developer, and we're not going through a developer to build this project. We are financing and building this on our own. We will own this facility. We will own this asset. And as Charlie mentioned, we intend to use the best possible goods and services that we can to put the building up so it can last the longest that it's capable of lasting. Charlie mentioned 50 years. We're in for the long haul. When we do this, that's the way we do it. We have done other communities where we've gone through a developer, and Gina can talk about that. This is one, like Old Irving Park, where we're coming in on our own, and we're making our commitment. I think I can turn it back to Pastor Harris, who might be able to speak a little bit about coming in and talking the talk. And here we are 8 years later, and we've expanded, our program efforts with him over the years, and very excited about that. So those are just
for sure. Yeah. I started kind of laughing when Marcellus asked a great question, and I think it's an excellent question that he's asking. I can tell you one of the things that I enjoyed, again, as a son of the soil of Bronzeville, what I have enjoyed is their focus was not brick and mortar, it was people. And that's really, really important. That was definitely important to me. And this has, again, been an 8-year relationship with Bright Star Community Outreach and the other community-based, faith-based, school-based organization, as well as the work that they've been doing with Near North for many years. So again, they've been around for a long time. But what we said to them was, the way that you prove it to us is your investment in not only this Black community, but Black builders, Black architects, Black, we've really had real conversations with Northwestern to the point where they had to listen, because at the end of the day, it was important to us that they become not just a building in the community, but really a part of the fabric of the community. And I can tell you, Marcellus, I've seen their sincerity continue to grow. And also, want us as a community to continue to challenge them. I believe that this should be a first step. There is so much more that should be done. So I'd like to say that from my perspective, they're starting off well, but I think there's a whole lot more that they're willing to do. Another example is from talking about the social determinants of health, we've created a show called Clergy and Clinicians, where community education around health is so important. And literally hundreds of thousands of people have viewed that show where we're talking to Black doctors through Black clergy in the Black community about Black issues. So to me, so far they've been doing great, but there's a lot more to be done, and they seem to be willing to be a part of it for the long haul.
Okay, I will pass it over to Mr. Martin. Before that, I know that, there's some things when we initially talked that were important to me. And certainly, having folks who are from the community and look like people from the community, be an integral part of this development. And I think there is a commitment to that. And so I will ask you guys to talk about that a little later, but Mr. Martin, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Alderman King, and pleasure to meet everybody. I am Harley Martin. I am the co-chair for the Advisory Development Committee. Looking at your blueprint, the rendering, I saw that you had the building up to the north side and the parking lot to the south. Have you thought of, I know this is not a permanent blueprint, but having the garage under the building instead of next to it to the south of the building? Comments, thoughts?
Yeah, I'll let Charlie answer that one. But I will say that it's a lot more expensive to go underground for parking than it is above surface level and above. But Charlie, you want to take that one?
Yeah, as Rob said, obviously that's one factor, but there's other factors with going that far below grade. If we're going to go 2-3 levels below grade, the farther down you go, the more stuff, if you will, you run into, whether it's utilities, water, and you also start to run the risk of undermining the surrounding buildings. And so in the past where we've had to do that, we've had to monitor the foundations of those buildings for damage. And so it's really something we like to avoid. But as I said, the goal, that diagram shows 2 different colors for the building and the parking, just to give everybody a feel of the massing. The goal is when that building looks like a building, when it's rendered and designed, it looks like one contiguous building, and you can't tell the difference between the building and the parking deck.
That's what I was just going to say. If you go back in your mind, Harley, to that one slide that showed the rendering of the facility up in Old Irving Park, that's inclusive of the parking, but you can't tell which is parking and which is building.
Yeah, a third of that building that you're seeing there is parking.
Is some of that parking underground though at Old Irving Park?
We do have some parking underground, yes.
And you started off with no parking underground?
I believe we had one level of parking underground to start off with.
Okay, so what would be the difference in the locations?
You finished?
I'm gonna add one thing on the parking element because it tends to get missed. The other thing that we know is patients don't like to park below grade as much. They don't feel as safe. And so quite honestly, I, as the real estate person and the security person, I really don't like when we have to go below grade. Sometimes we have to do it to get the building to fit on the site and to get enough density. But what we hear over and over from patients, and I know I do it myself, is patients don't, and our employees don't feel as safe parking below grade. So I do think it's something that we have to factor in.
So, and I will just, there was a related question about the renderings for this particular project and why they had the renderings from Old Irving Park up. It's because those are renderings that came after, for Old Irving Park, after they had community meetings such as this. They haven't gotten to that space yet. They're hoping to get there after this meeting and meetings with me and the advisory council. And so we hope to, and we can ask that too, like what would be the timeline for bringing renderings, but that's just a specific answer that was related to your question. I would say, the answer to that question, it sounds like, is that It depends on how important that is to the community and the context of the entire project. It is more expensive, I've heard. It's less desirable, but it can be done as shown in Old Irving Park. Let's go to your co-chair, I should say Judge David Kelly, a new title, but well-deserved. Proud of you, Judge Kelly. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alderman King. So very kind of you. Good evening, everyone. I am excited. I live just a stone throw away from this new proposed facility, just a few blocks away. So I'm super excited about that. Super excited that my wife will be able to actually walk to get some mammogram screening, as she's a current patient of Northwestern University Hospital. And just to sort of follow up on something that I expressed on our last call, and Ms. Weldy alluded to it today, is that there are a number of young families or folks who waited later in life to have kids who have young kids, and we have to get our kids up and across the city over to the north side to visit with our pediatrician. So again, that was expressed because we don't really have a lot of opportunities local to visit with pediatricians. So if you could just expand on that a little bit, and you said that you were looking into it, what does that mean?
Yeah, I can talk about it. That was actually not feedback that we anticipated out of the first meeting. We did take that back to our clinical operations team and our strategy team to say, we heard it from 3 different people on the call that they're all driving north of the city for pediatric primary care. I think our aha is that there's probably specialty care, but it's really primary care that's lacking. And so the plan right now is Charlie's going to work with our clinical operations team to figure out how to work pediatrics into the program if we can do it. Because we heard you loud and clear. If it's something that the community needs, we need to figure out how to put it into the building.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that follow-up.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Judge Kelly. And I think our last chair of a committee is Ms. Carmouche. You have a question as well?
No, disregarded. I should have removed the hand. It was answered. Thank you, Alderman King.
Okay, no, thank you. And so I see a couple more questions. What I will say is we're going to do live questions first, and then I will attempt to go in the chat. So if you have a question in the chat that you think hasn't been answered, please raise your hand to ask directly. But I will start with Mr. Grant and then Ms. Hilbay. But Mr. Grant, if you can, in full transparency, turn on your video and then ask your question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Alderman King. I'm not dressed right now, so I just,
Okay, well, don't turn on your camera then. By mistake or intentionally.
That's
But-
not. I got my
But
t-shirt.
please
question-
do ask your question. And everybody else get dressed so that you can ask your question. At least from the waist up.
I'm just got my
Go
dirty,
ahead, Mr. Grant.
got my dirty clothes on. Anyway, the question I have is regarding, it's a 2-part question. And one is for Charlie regarding the alleyway that's behind the property. I know there's an Evans Cottage Grove alleyway. What's going to happen to that alley? And 2 is, what's more importantly, I think, Robert, you can answer that, is regarding the programs. I see on the programs, you have a very extensive program, by the way, great presentation, really enjoyed it. However, I did not see anything mentioned regarding mental health. Is that something that you foresee in the future to add on as part of Northwestern's program? Because there is a very desperate need for mental health in our community. And that's all I have on it.
No, great question, Mr. Grant. And I will let Charlie, I think he steered that question to you. If you're the appropriate person, why don't you go ahead and answer the first question, and then we can get to whoever wants to answer the second one.
Sure. So in our due diligence process so far, we have learned a few things about the alley. We still have a lot to learn, but what we know is that alley, some of the issues are going to take collaboration with multiple parties to resolve. Essentially, it's it's actually a privately owned alley that's functioned as a publicly owned alley. But it likely will need to function as public for this development to work, and probably benefits the community if it were public, and also has a way to go out, because it currently dead ends. So that will require some out of the box thinking as well. And then another just tidbit, one of the smaller parcels has an owner, it's the size of a minivan essentially, has an owner that can't be determined, that dates back to the late 1800s. So that alley is not short on issues, but we plan to work with the community, Alderman King's office, and the city to do what we can to improve this condition. And we already have some great ideas on how we might accomplish that.
And as to your second question, let me address mental health, because that's a critical issue. And I referred to it earlier as behavioral health, and I should have stated that I also meant mental health. That has been identified as a key need for the community. So it is on our list of types of care to bring into the community.
Thank you. Ms. Hilbay. You're on mute. You're still on.
Okay, there I go.
There you go. Yep.
So from the last meeting, after the last meeting, I did a reconnaissance mission of the site, and I was allowed into this meeting late, but I wanted to find out the building that's on the corner of 49th and Cottage, will it remain with its storefronts, or is that building going to be a tear down?
No, it will remain.
Okay.
Yep. So, but the thought is to continue the retail, that's kind of there on that corner all the way through the north to 48th Street, so that there will be kind of a robust retail area, continuing down the Cottage Grove corridor.
Okay, real good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Hilbay. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Next question by Ms. Boyle.
Hello. Thank you for this amazing presentation. I work for a company.
Is it possible, Ms. Boyle, for you to show your video, and anybody else who wants to ask questions? Unless you're not close. Can you? I'm sorry, we may have lost you, Ms. Boyle.
How do we find out about those opportunities?
You went out, Ms. Boyle. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Is it possible for you to turn your video on?
No, actually, unfortunately, it's not possible. Could you hear my question though?
No, I actually missed your question because I was talking, but go ahead. But everybody else, let's, full disclosure, let's try and share videos. We can't meet in person, but in lieu of that, we'd like, to have some interaction. But go ahead, Ms. Boyle, your question is?
Sure. My question was, are there contract opportunities available for the construction of this facility for construction management firms? And if so, how would we find out about those opportunities?
Right.
I'll take that one. So as I mentioned, diversity is really important to us, and the way we set up our design RFP and the design team is set up reflects that. And we plan to implement a similar strategy when we get to the construction portion. We're not there yet with the construction portion. We need to get the design going first, but there will absolutely be opportunities for community members to participate in one way or another in this building. Just a couple of things. We're working with the target group to help us assess the marketplace for that work. We're also working with Hire 360 to get members from the community hired to work on the building. And we really plan to engage the community of local contractors to help form our project delivery structure. And then you can also just reach out to us directly to find out as well.
Is there an email list or some sort of online platform? Or I guess my question is, how do you guys go about advertising your RFPs?
We haven't got there yet. Our RFPs are not like public RFPs, like if the city were sending out RFPs for work. But like I said, we plan to really engage the community. We're going to be working with both the target group and Hire 360 on that strategy, and that strategy is coming hopefully in the next few months.
Okay, thank you.
And we certainly, as our office, want to be, involved, in that process as well. And I think we spoke with them because I'd also like to see them talk to another organization, which is QCDC in our community, about some of the retail. I think I wasn't at the meeting with the advisory council, but I know there were questions about retail. I know you guys have an internal team, but again, that's part, I think, of being a part of a community, is using the assets that we have in our community. And QCDC is a strong one. So I'd like for you guys to, meet with them as well. We also talked about other ways of making sure, that construction, again, it's important since this is a predominantly African-American community for this project to be led hopefully by an African-American team. I think we talked about that, and I think there's a commitment to that as well. So, we will try and be as transparent as we can, and hopefully before those big decisions are made, we can understand how and where they're made, and if people are interested, to make it known to them. All right,
Alderman, if I can say, our community owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to you and your leadership for pushing Black participation. So I thought it would be important to say on this call how much work you have done previous to this call to make sure that that has happened, and Northwestern hearing that. So just a huge shout out to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate that. Ms. Willis.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alderman, for getting this meeting together. My question is, I guess, regarding the greening of the building, because it has such a large footprint. Are there any plans for a green roof on this building, or any portion of the roof to be a green roof, to help mitigate this heat island effect of the city?
So I can't tell you for sure that we'll have a green roof on the building because it hasn't been designed yet. But what I can tell you is the next two buildings that we have coming out of the ground, one's in the city and one's in the suburbs, they both have green roofs. We have a commitment to sustainability. So there's a series of components we typically like to see on our projects. And green roofs are certainly one of those tools we use in our toolbox for developing sustainable buildings.
And I guess then the second part of my question would be, since you mentioned sustainability, do you go after any LEED certification or lean in that direction as far as the materials and the processes of the construction?
We don't always go for LEED certification. The two buildings that I just mentioned, one we are and one we are not. It just kind of depends on the situation. I couldn't tell you whether we would go for LEED in this situation. And really the reason is we have our own sustainability checklist that we grab the best parts of each program. There's a lot of different programs out there. So LEED is one program. There's another one called Green Globes. There's a handful of them out there, and we like to take the best components from each, and they sometimes don't agree with each other, which is why we don't always go for LEED.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, though. I appreciate that, Ms. Willis. Thank you so much. Ms. Wilson.
Mr. Wilson, Dominic?
Oh, is it? Okay. I know a Dominique Wilson too, so I thought that was maybe Judge. Okay. Mr. Wilson, did they disappear?
I think we lost him, Alderman.
Okay. All right. Well, if he comes back, please let us know. We'll get you next. Ms. Coleman?
Hello, everybody. Hi, Alderman.
Hi, Ms. Coleman. How are you?
And First of all, I'm so happy to be part of this presentation. I think it's wonderful. I am part of the healthcare community. And I just had a question specifically to the African American community. There are a lot of different nuances and things sometimes in terms of our care and the barriers and things that we face as a community. In particular, we have quite a large geriatric population. Has there been any thought given to a visiting physician team for our elders that have difficulty getting out to visits, that maybe cannot even get into clinics? Are there teams that the main campus does have a visiting visiting geriatric physician group? Is that something that will be accessible to engage the community here in Bronzeville for those patients that have that need?
That's a great question, Ms. Coleman. And I will say that that's why we want to have these community meetings for that kind of input, because we had not gotten that before, but we will certainly take that back as we did from the previous meeting with the comments we got about pediatrics. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe, Ms.
Hmm?
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Coleman. I'm sorry. I didn't
Oh,
mean
no. And I just had one other piece, because we're engaging the community workforce and the investment that Northwestern is making, which I think is great. I imagine there will be job opportunities for people that live in the community that want to now join the Northwestern Better Network. So in terms of families that have children, will there be opportunities for daycare services? I know the main campus has those type of availabilities for staff. Will that be something that can be brought to our community as well to help hire, for patients, for people that have, young children and want to work in the network?
Gina, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit, and I apologize, my voice has been getting worse all day. We don't have plans right now to bring childcare, for example, to this facility. We do have childcare on our main hospital campuses, but we haven't typically put them in our outpatient facilities simply because we haven't had the square footage to do so. Childcare actually requires a pretty significant square footage footprint on the ground floor. That said, if this will be part of our retail landscape check in the city, in this neighborhood, if in fact what we deem is that childcare is actually where the greatest need is, it could be that retail space becomes a childcare use. So that's typically where we solve childcare within our building portfolio.
Wonderful. That's great to know that the opportunity exists for that. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Coleman. Those were great questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alderman.
Okay. Ms. Zaragoza, I hope I pronounced that right.
Yes, you did. Thank you. I work for Northwestern currently. I just had a question in regards to kind of what she said regarding the geriatrics. I was wondering if you were going to implement it like Northwestern, the downtown campus has, where the geriatrics is split, inside of the internal medicine. Because I do notice that there's a lot of issues with some of the patients who come downtown. They won't, the older patients, especially in the wintertime, it's a big issue for some of them. So I was wondering if there are any plans to do that. And then the other question was, will there be something that'll be continued for the community as far as a committee that is ongoing for the community to kind of interact to find out what the developments of everything is going, how everything is going?
Alderman, if you want me to.
Yep. No, I can jump in. I thought you were going to get, why don't you get the first one? I'll take the second one. Yep.
Thank you. Yes, as first question, again, geriatrics coming up, and we will take that back to our medical team. It's great to get this feedback. So thank you for bringing that up. We will definitely bring that to the team that's designing this facility and deciding what will go there. Good to hear the comments.
Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate this being brought to Bronzeville. It's very exciting.
Yes.
Great. And as far as the community interaction, yes, we will, the team will take back our recommendations and bring back a rendering and bring back another kind of bite at the apple after they've taken note, and they'll come back with their, I would say, perception of what we all said, and kind of put that into a drawing or a rendering, and then bring it back to the community. And then, there'll be other opportunities also to engage, with the team on different aspects, whether it be on jobs, as they come up and as they're related, whether it be on construction and or professional services and what have you. We'll make sure that, we have a robust kind of interaction with the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cropper, how are you?
I am good, thank you. And I just want to underscore how much I appreciate you, Alderman, and you, Northwestern. I mean, Alderman King, you've just been wonderful giving us access to this information and opportunities to have some input. And I'm a former member of the Northwestern community. And what I want to say and put a final point is to Northwestern, you guys are coming in. This is really exciting to us. And as far as I'm concerned, you're coming in as a neighbor. And I get that you're not a developer and you have an investment in your brick and mortar and your services for 50 years. But when I think about Northwestern being in Bronzeville, I think about the brain trust that you can bring and not the burden that the Alderman's office would have to keep us engaged, or the team that's right here now that may not be the same team 5 years from now. And I want you guys to go back and tell your Northwestern community that we really are looking at a partnership that's a neighbor partnership, and that you're going to come in and have a standing committee that's always looking at how we evolve and what this community is going to need, because at the fundamental issue of all of our challenges is health. And so you could be a huge partner, not only in terms of delivering the services that you do, but sharing some of your brain trust that can come in and just be a part of some meetings that tells us, here's a different perspective about thinking about things. So now that you'll be in our community, we want you to know that you're family. And we're going to treat you like family. And we're going to, appreciate and respect, but also lean on you as a huge resource that we've been looking for a long time. So thank you so much for this. And thank you, Alderman.
Well, thank you, Ms. Cropper.
Thank you, Ms. Cropper. Appreciate your comments. And on the call tonight, although she didn't have a speaking role, is Ann Hall. And Ann's responsibility as Vice President of Community Relations is to make sure that we are tied into each of our communities, that we're not just a physical building, that we're an involved partner in the community. We have been before in Bronzeville. We have all the plans to continue to do that and grow that. So thank you for your comments.
I think I would also say, I've never seen our employees so excited about us announcing a site. Our employees, our physicians, our caregivers across the board are so excited to come to Bronzeville. This has been a site they've been ready for us to do for so long. The president of our medical group is pushing us so hard because he has so many people requesting that they be able to work at this site. So it's really been amazing and cool to see the excitement of our internal team about doing this particular site. So you're going to see all of the same neighborly love of Northwestern moving into your neighborhood with more exuberance than you may know what to do with.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Ms. Tukes, you're muted.
Sorry. To what degree will the staff, the medical staff or the providers be racially / ethnically diverse?
That's a great question. And as Gina just mentioned, the enthusiasm among our medical team currently is very high. And Dr. Chrisman, who heads our medical group, president of the physicians group, has many, many requests already in place for people to work in that community that are people of color. We also have talked to Dr. Denai Simpson, who has one of the only operating African-American transplant programs in the country. And she is also very excited about bringing the transplant program into Bronzeville, into this facility. So there's a high degree of enthusiasm, and the workforce there will reflect the community.
Do you have numbers, percentages?
Don't have numbers yet, and we haven't worked out those details, but can assure you that the workforce there will reflect the community. We want to hire from the community as well. That's going to be a high priority for us.
No, I think that's a great question, just kind of institutionally, as you kind of venture out into different communities, obviously the better representation you have, the better you can serve those communities. So appreciate you taking a look at that. I'm not really a politician. I'm just a public servant who's happens to be a politician, but I can't help but notice that, all your VPs are, not of color. And so, I hope Northwestern will think about that kind of as they, as they think about coming into really diverse communities and the impact that could have. But if your other VPs that aren't here are people of color, let me know. I will definitely would happily be, stand corrected. So, Ms. Clark. You're muted, Ms. Clark.
I'm unmuted now. Hi.
Yes, you are.
I am really excited about Northwestern coming on into Bronzeville. I remember when they didn't have anything on the south side, but Michael Reese, and that's been a long time ago. And I am concerned about, we would want to have minority positions. We want minority contractors, but I'm looking for quality services. I'm looking for sensitivity to the community. I am a former health worker. I wasn't a worker, but I work for the Department of Public Health. And I don't care what color or race you are, but if you're sensitive to me and you understand my needs, then I'm going to be comfortable with you. And if you have an understanding of what the culture is of the community. So I'm hoping that you bring that, because I know Northwestern has that. You have a lot of resources, and we look forward to you coming and being transparent. So kudos to coming and welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Ms. Rinder.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alderman, and thank you, everyone from the Northwestern team. My question is primarily, we talk about the social determinants of health, and I'm in health information. You indicated that you're going to have some meeting spaces within the facility. Did you take into consideration in those resource spaces or the community rooms that you would make room to really dive deep into talking about the management of care, such as your managed care services, preventive maintenance, follow-up? Is there a need for a dental clinic? Some of the things that are truly affecting the African-American, Black and Brown communities, are you going to have a team that are dedicated to finding out what those specific needs are for the children, for the seniors, for adults as a whole picture?
Thank you, Ms. Render. Appreciate that question. Actually, we expect the community to inform us what they would like to have in that community space. I think what you suggested are excellent suggestions. It tracks what we would normally be doing, but none of our other facilities have community space within them. We usually have community meetings and we'll pick a location within the community. The unique thing about this is we're reserving space within this building to have those kinds of discussions, those kinds of meetings, those kind of educational opportunities. So we will listen, and the community will let us know what they'd like to have in there.
Thank you. And I know that, there are a number of things that the community wants, as part of this development. However, this development won't, solve all of the issues that we need or all of the retail or businesses that we need. And as we look, throughout the entire corridor, there's a lot going on. If you haven't been to some of our other meetings, so there's a lot coming, on the Cottage Grove corridor, and hopefully they'll complement each other, and that with between all of them, we'll have what we need kind of as a community. But these have been some great questions. So I want to continue at least for another 10 minutes with Miss Teresa Vidalon. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but Miss Vidalon,
Vidalon, you got it.
Thank you.
All right, I turned on my camera.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Alderman
Great.
King. My question is will this proposal involve a community health worker program? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Christie.
Yeah, great question. This is one of the ones I wish Posh was on the phone with us tonight. He's the one that I mentioned is dropping his daughter off at college. That's Posh's sweet spot. He would be able to answer that. I'm not going to take a shot at it, but we're going to reflect what you just asked, and I'll make sure he's aware of that. And we'll, if you want us to, Alderman, we can provide an answer back to you.
Yeah, if you can, do you know specifically what that is though? Is that something you can explain to us, or if Ms. Vidalon can explain what that is? Because I don't specifically know what it is.
Yeah, I think we're very much aware of what that is.
Yeah.
Community health worker. So
Can
that's-
you give us what that is? Just
Yeah,
in
so
a
that's
short-
somebody that's trained to work in the community with a health care provider like us, and with our partners like our FQHC partners, in this case near North, that could go out into the community and could meet with patients in their homes as a follow-up. So they may have seen a doctor, they know that in a couple weeks they should be at a certain point. Maybe this community care worker will follow up with that patient to find out, have you progressed to this point? Have you been taking your meds? Do you need to come back in and see the doctor? It's a very successful way of providing care and outreach in a community.
Sounds like it. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that, Mr. Christie. Miss Lynn?
Thank you so much. I'm glad that, there's improvement coming to the area. I'm just wondering why now? I mean, the area is changing. We've needed vital health care in the area for a long time, since Michael Reese has been gone, and now Mercy, with Insight here now. What is the draw now to do it? Like I said, because the area is changing. And also, we be hiring from the community, and then, like maybe start recruiting high school students and fund their college, including medical school, or, what are the plans?
Thank you for those questions, Ms. Lynn. A couple thoughts. One, regarding your last question and high school students. Again, the program that we plan to bring into Kenwood will do exactly that. It will provide access to students who want to pursue a career as either a physician or a medical researcher, the opportunity to spend 4 years with us during the summer to learn what that is, to also get a a physician mentor that can help them as they transition into college. It's been a very successful program where we've done it in Westinghouse. Our second school where we want to do that is in your community. We also have a program that's called Discovery Program. Not everybody has the ability or desire to go on to be a physician, but there are other jobs within the healthcare workforce that are available. Our Discovery Program provides access to knowledge of what goes on in a hospital and how those jobs can be obtained. And yes, as I mentioned before, a high priority of ours will be to hire from within the community. I know you had one other question, and I can't. I dropped it off the top of my head. If you could remind me of your initial question.
My initial question was, while I appreciate the effort of Northwestern coming to Bronzeville, what is the major push now? Because we've been in need of vital health care in the area for a very long time.
I can talk about this a little bit.
Thank you.
We, quite frankly, historically primarily stayed on our inpatient campuses with our outpatient care in the downtown market. We just had never really left Streeterville much until recently. And about 2 years ago, we made a strategic decision that rather than just going into the community with, 5,000 square foot spaces here and there within the city, we really needed to think differently about people having to come to Streeterville. And that's when we started to really look at the data of where our patients were coming from. And it was kind of an eye opener. And so that's really what led us down this path. You will see that we over time will likely do more facilities like this because we really do believe it's the right way for us to deliver care. But we just hadn't done a lot of it until recently.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for your response. Mr. Mims. And then I'm going to go to some of the, there've been some really good questions in the chat, so I'm just going to bring them out after Mr. Mims.
My question is really simple. We haven't talked about project timeframe. Can you provide a timeframe for the completion of the project?
Yeah, design, which would include both zoning and permitting in the community engagement process, from start to finish, that's probably 12 to 18 months when all is said and done. And then construction is probably another 18 months on top of that. The community engagement / zoning piece of it is probably the most undetermined at this point. The design and permitting and construction is relatively straightforward. It's that process that can fluctuate a little bit. But I would say if we're starting now in earnest, that's 3 years from opening the building approximately.
When would you like to break ground, Charlie?
I'd let 12 to 18 months.
So a year to a year and a half from now.
Yeah.
That's ideal for you. And will that be more dictated by, the process, like zoning, how long it takes to do that, and the sale of the land, those types of things?
Yeah, I think the private parcels that we need, those are well on a track to not cause a delay to that. It's the city parcel acquisition that's a little tricky and starts to play into the whole zoning conversation as well. And we'll also need a certificate of need for this process, but that fits within that time, that 12 to 18 month time frame.
Okay. And speaking of time frame, so when will you choose the construction team by?
If we are starting the community engagement and design process in the next month or so, I would say within 3 months after starting that, we would want to have the construction team on board. It's always best to have them on board early, to point out issues with the design from a constructability standpoint. And the earlier we get them on board, the better job we can do of hiring from within the community and getting minority contractors on board and subcontractors. So I would say within 3 months of really beginning in earnest the design and community engagement process, we would have that team identified.
Okay. And I know, folks have kind of talked about it. I've talked about it, and I don't know if this is you, Mr. Christie, Ms. Weldy, but can you talk about your commitment to both, having a diverse team, perhaps, a diverse entity lead this effort? Can you guys talk to that a little bit?
I can talk about it. We know that having this team reflect the community is incredibly important. And I would actually say what we've learned in preparing for this project is that we need to take a lot of the changes in the way we bid projects to all of our projects. So we have actually other projects that are now ahead of this one that have seen the benefits of some of the language change in how we bid. When the GC bid goes to the street, it will go to both minority-owned firms and non-minority-owned firms, but there will be clear language from us making it clear that the diversity of that team is actually one of the criteria with which we will make a selection. And we will also be clear that we would like to see a minority team leading this if the two teams can actually, if they propose together, come to a method to make that happen. So one of the things we know is that we can create a bid that helps speak to the GC community about our expectations. We also know that the GC community does a really, really good job of doing what they do best, which is thinking about how to leverage the best talent and the best partnerships to bring us an incredible team. And so we're confident that they're going to do that on this project like they have on our other projects.
Yeah. And I truly appreciate you guys not only looking at this project, but looking kind of at all of your projects. I think that is a true commitment, you know, not just like, okay, this community is really asking for this, but no, you know, we're committed to this, you know, structurally throughout all of our endeavors. And so I truly appreciate that commitment as well. So thank you for that. And I know it's coming up on 6:30 now, but just let me look at a couple of these questions in the chat. How many square feet? That's a quick question about. I know that it may change from rendering or from, you know, concept to rendering and as we go forward, but about how many square feet are we talking about? And then about how much parking are we thinking? That may not be for you, Ms. Geldy, it may be someone else, but whoever wants to take that.
Yeah, so the total building we're looking at is about 100,000 square feet. I think there were some questions about retail and community space. I think off the top of my head, what we have programmed is maybe 5,000 square feet of retail and 10 to 12,000 square feet of community space, and those may fluctuate a little bit as we move towards design. Parking, off the top of my head, the requirement is 2.5 spaces per 1,000, so we would have 250 spaces in the building.
Okay, and I know we talked about time frame, but let's kind of chop it up. So when could we expect to have, you know, a rendering based on some of the feedback that you've already heard?
So Julia Perkins, who's actually on the call, she's our community engagement consultant on this project. And she's worked with our design team already to put together a framework for how we'd like to, you know, engage with the community to determine that, because we don't want to design the building without you guys or ahead of that feedback. So to be honest, I'm hesitant to answer that until we've kind of sat down and reviewed that, so that we're on the same page and are really getting the feedback from the community. I don't want to say we're going to have a rendering, for example, in a month. That I don't think that's enough time to really engage with the community and hear from them. So
I'm sorry, Charlie, I was just going to add in, thank you for having me on the call, Alderman King. We have developed a very robust community engagement process. We're looking at this engagement as an asset-based community engagement process. So the first phase is just getting all of the data out there that we need, because it's about educating, right? Because you just don't go in a place without kind of understanding what the community and the neighborhood is. And Bronzeville already has a wealth of data out there like CMAP, excuse me, context, and some other resources. Pastor Harris and Mr. Moore, have not had a chance to meet with you yet. You're on the list. So as part of that kind of research phase, it's getting a list of all of the key people that we need to talk to. And we also want to talk internally to the Northwestern family, because many live in Bronzeville, to get their insight. So talking with the Northwestern family, going out and identifying, key voices within the Bronzeville area, but also there are a lot of voices that sometimes go unheard. And we want to make sure that we have points of entry for them to give voice to process. So we've established listening sessions, ideation sessions, brainstorming sessions, and then to come down to visioning sessions. So there would be different points of entry for different individuals along the way, again, kind of building on the assets and the knowledge and the talents that Bronzeville have. There's been a lot of ideas that have surfaced today. I mean, some is about parking, there was about daycare. We want to be able to hear all of that and then have the community say, well, of this list, what are the things that are really important and vital for you to be represented in the center? So it is a robust project and it will take some time, but I think that the end result will enable Northwestern to have a design that is really reflective of the community and of the community's needs. And to say, I know that there was comments made earlier about the long-term relationship. I mean, it is a long-term relationship, and part of those conversations is that we want to understand, what does that look like to you? What does that mean? What the mechanisms need to be in place in order to engender that type of long-term relationship that I think will exceed the 50 years. So I just wanted to add that to help clarify about the process that we have established.
And Alderman, if I can also add to Julia's point, for some of us, this is not a brand new conversation, right? It's been 8 years of these kinds of conversations. Now, what would be new is the conversations around what the facility would look like, be like, and needed. But there, again, close to over 100 organizations that have been a part of that. And we have our community action plan that is on brightstarcommunityoutreach.com's website. I can put that in the link, but these focus groups and things like that have been talking for many years now. And we're excited to see more people coming to the table for taking this from being idealistic to realistic. So.
Thank you for that, Pastor. I see Ms. Coleman has her hands raised. We're going to try and end exactly at 6:40, as I planned about an hour and a half for this meeting, and we started a little bit late. Ms. Coleman, if you can start your video and ask your question.
Yes, quick question, just very simple. The last lady that spoke gave a lot of good information. It involved a lot of inclusion. So how would someone from the community like myself or others that are on this line become part of those special sessions? How do we go about getting connected? What kind of information can we take away to?
That's a really good question, Ms. Coleman. I think that we're trying to identify mechanisms, whether it's something that could be housed at an M site to sign up. So we're still trying to get, what's the best way to get the broadest reach, and to also have people register, because there's all those logistics. So we're working on it. I don't have a definitive answer, but as soon as we do, then we would be able to surely share it out to have as many voices engaged as possible. So
Okay,
thank you so much for the question.
Thank you. And the share will go through what platform? Like, how will you share it? Will it be through Northwestern, or I'm just,
And well, I mean, those are, again, I think that there are some things that we haven't fully worked out because it's still those mechanisms. I'm hopeful that Alderman King will allow us to kind of use her platform as a way of populating names and voices and assigning and their different and possibly, Northwestern Medical. So we're still figuring it out. I know it, but we will get there.
Once we figure it out, we will certainly get it out to the community so that, there's the ability for people who want to be involved. So we will certainly over communicate that. But thank you. Thank you, Ms. Coleman. A couple questions just to end up our last 2 minutes. I saw someone had a good question about the square footage, and are the programs being fitted to a certain square footage, that you may have be predetermined by zoning, or are you willing to say, hey, we could add more programming if we had more room? Can someone kind of speak to that piece?
Gina, do you want to take that or do you want me to take it?
Let you take it and then I'll layer on if I need to layer on.
Okay. So we have not necessarily tailored this building to build as much as we can or limit ourselves at whatever that zoning number is. We have, you know, using the data that our strategy team has put together to determine what programs should be in here and what size they should be. And that's what is driving the 100,000 square feet right now. Gina, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would say is Charlie's absolutely right. Our program right now is indicating the 100,000 square feet. It's not unheard of that we will get 6 months down the road and believe that we need more space. It's happened to us before, but right now the 100,000 square feet is our best information.
Yeah. And I would not want that to lead your programming. So just know that,
Okay.
that's
helpful.
Yeah. So I would be willing, if the program dictated, to give zoning relief so that we can get the right programming at the right time so that we can have a good match in our community.
Very helpful.
That's great news because it won't be the first time we've had to call an alderman to say we might need a little more room.
Yeah, no, I certainly understand that. And then there was a question about acute care. Will there be acute care?
Well, I think the plans are to provide the kind of care that we outlined in the presentation. And then if it's found out at this location that the patient needs to be, recommended to go downtown for additional care, whether that be diagnostics that are not available there, or whether that be an overnight hospitalization or surgery that can't be provided there, then that would be provided downtown. But the starting point would be at this local center and go from there.
Right. So there'd be what we would call urgent care at this facility. Okay. And then I saw somebody put a recommendation for naming, even though Northwestern Medicine, what will obviously be up there, but someone mentioned Daniel Hale Williams, who did the first successful open heart surgery. Happened to be African American, who's from the community. So if you're thinking of looking for any naming, opportunities, I think that would be a great one to reflect not only, a great surgeon, but someone from the community who's done a lot for this community. So just to put that out there. And with that, I just want to thank you all and your team for bringing this presentation, for being patient, with our office and our process, and really for listening, and look forward to hearing and seeing what you bring back, what you bring back to the table, based on everything you've heard here today and based on your own expertise. And so again, thank you. Also want to thank our Grand Boulevard Advisory Council, just another opportunity to shout out what they're doing in the community, not only around development opportunities, but around other areas that include things like arts and parks and safety, education, infrastructure improvement. So if those are some of the things you're interested in, please take this opportunity to join them, to join your community, and really building your own community. That's really what it's about, empowering the community to really inform us on what your needs are. So again, thank you to everybody for your time. Northwestern, again, thank you. And look forward to next steps and, moving forward. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.